99.999% of brain processes happen at an unconscious level. We have to accept it. It's not an issue of ethics or not ethics. It's an issue of accepting the biological truth and using that understanding to design things to solve some of the most significant problems in the world. Now, design for behavior change in that way is very different, much more difficult than human-centered design. And we have to approach design for behavior change in a very different way. I have found that the clients also then starts, as we said before, even the beliefs they have in you actually is much more when you have a depth to the problem. An organization that doesn't believe in you as a designer spending time at where the place is happening is not a place where you're going to flower as a designer. You will fail. And when you fail, no one is going to say that, oh, this is my organization's policy that failed. They'll put the blame on you and your intervention. Quit that organization.
Today's guest doesn't just talk about design, he uses it to tackle human trafficking, reduce HIV in Africa, and improve road safety across India. Today I have with me Biju Dominic. He is the co-founder of Final Mile Consulting and a chief evangelist at Fractal Analytics. I've found Biju to be a rare mind who has spent decades at the intersection of neuroscience, design, and AI. His work may not be seen on a phone or a laptop, but it is a masterclass in using design as a tool for societal transformation. In today's conversation with Biju, we'll be talking about the limits of traditional design, knowing what today's design education lacks, and understanding why the true role of a designer is to drive behavior change. With that, I welcome Biju, and thanks for making it to Behind the Screen Season 2.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for.
I'm so excited to have you here because I absolutely love the kind of subjects that you have dived into. And I feel like it's so important for us as designers to understand that in so much more depth. So I'm very excited to ask you your very first question, which is, why do you think every designer should study neuroscience or behavioral design?
I think the reason why we should study neuroscience is because I strongly believe if you want to and I'm sure a lot of people listening in also want to be great designers. I think how good you as a designer depends upon how good your understanding of human behavior is. How well have you understood the behavior of the target audience for whom you're actually designing that intervention. The reason I'm talking about neuroscience and not talking about behavioral science or psychology theories, and I'm specifically using the term neuroscience, is because I've been looking at the ability of the people who've been dealing with human behavior to influence human behavior throughout for the last 100 years or so. And you look closely and you realize the failure rate of those trying to deal with human behavior is huge. Whether it's marketing, whether it's change management, whether it's policy making, I think we just don't get a grip of how to really understand and so influence human behavior. And I think even my first 18 years of my career in the world of advertising, I launched a lot of brands. But unfortunately, maybe it had some success in the initial years, but almost within few years it died. And that's when I started looking around and said, is this failure common, or is it something is only peculiar to what I'm doing in my team? And that's when I realized that this is widespread. And then I asked myself one question: is it because the practice of the theory that is causing all these problems, or are the theories itself wrong? And that gave me a huge realization that when I say human behavior theories, it is actually a combination of theories. Behaviorism that speaks about stimulus and response, psychoanalysis, William James, cognitive science, which came and said that all things are not stimulus and response. Of course, there was classical economics that started it all. It said man is a rational human being. And then you have behavioral economics that comes and says, no, man is not a rational human being at all. He's an irrational being. It's a kitschy of all these theories that now we put under one term called behavioral science.
Yeah.
And I said, now, keep those contradictory theories away because they might explain certain facets of human behavior well. But if you really want to understand human behavior, go to the origin of it. And that is what is happening between our ears, which is the functioning of the brain. The more we understand what is happening between our ears, better will be our understanding of human behavior. And that's why neuroscience, the study of human brain, actually becomes the fundamental theory that we need to have before we actually have become a good designer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've heard you say that you refrain from talking about behavioral design, but more of neuroscience design. So where do you think a designer can start if they want to shift, from understanding behavioral design to neuroscience in a little bit more depth? Like, where do you think the starting point of that could be for a designer?
No, one, there's no option. And, I've been involved with design education. I'm on the advisory board of BITS Design School. And I've been giving sessions and talking in a lot of, not just in design schools, even among the top clients. And I've been telling them, high time we change. And we need to bring this learning of neuroscience into what you do. And there's no option. You have to go back and, go to the neuroscience books and really learn, how does the human brain function?
Yeah.
And do that. And that's the only option. Now, the good thing is that when you actually start looking to the streets of this world, and then you look at the organized religion, the political parties, terrorist organizations, and you'll see some very good examples of neuroscience-based design that they've been doing it for centuries. It's just that we didn't know what are the science behind, why they were doing what they were doing. And but if you really look deeper, you realize it's because intuitively they knew the functioning of the human brain. Just simple things like repetition. Now, if we look at our signages today on our roads, which says school and over and done with. But look at all religions, all prayers are repeated. Look at political parties, Inkulab, Inkulab, Inkulab Sindabad. There's a repetition of 3.
Yeah.
Look at religion, the construction of our gods. In Hindu philosophy or Hindu religion is Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu.
Yeah.
In Christianity, it's Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Oh.
Now, they knew the power of repetition, the power of the repetition of 3. They have done an extremely good job of it. Now, whereas here, still no repetition, and we just put 1.
Yeah.
And that is where I would say, 1, you can learn neuroscience, the theory of neuroscience. The other is look to the streets of our country, and you will see some brilliant designs, and then try to figure out what is the real science behind it, and then try to apply it. So you can approach design either way.
Is there any book that you would recommend where we can get started with, diving a little bit more deep into this or studying about it?
Obviously, there are multiple books, each independent. And one of the books that really inspired me was V.S. Ramachandran, who was the head of neuroscience at San Diego University. His books really inspired me because he really takes what I call a transdisciplinary approach to design. He looks at the Chola statue or the Parvati and looks at the waist to hip ratio and says, look at it. That's extremely thin by all standards. And then he calls the facet of peak shifting, which our brain loves when something is dramatized. 2, obviously he links that to the brain and how, the brain talks. So he has taken an extremely wonderful, perspective. And there are a few, definitely people like that. And I'm writing a book right now, which will hopefully a few months' time will come in, which again sort of combines all this. Yes, you're right. We need to read a lot. We need to acquire a lot of new knowledge for us to become a good designer.
Lovely. That's amazing. I can't wait for your book to come out, honestly. I think the first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and buy it and just start reading it. So I'm very excited about that. And, there's so many, Biju and I have had so many conversations, and I think, he's had such interesting case studies and examples that he's experienced and worked on, and he's, I think, consciously worked on changing so many things in the world that is not easily visible, but you will see the change happening. So I'm very excited about that. But what I want to know is that, this is taking from one of your case studies that we had, a discussion behind the screen.
Yeah, but
Was, you've called every major societal problem from girl trafficking to road deaths a design problem, which is very interesting. Like, why do you think that that's a design problem and not a behavior problem or a, any other sort of problem?
It is a behavior problem.
Okay.
It is a behavior problem. But then many times when we have a problem, our approach to dealing with that particular problem is to say, build awareness.
Yeah.
And build awareness of the consequences of that particular problem, and people won't indulge in that particular behavior. Or people say, let's talk about the rewards of indulging in some other behavior, and once they know the rewards, they will sustain that behavior for a long time. Now, we've looked at almost, as I said, a whole host of human behavior problems in the last 18 years, and I can categorically tell you one thing: awareness is not the issue. They have full awareness.
Oh, okay.
Full awareness of what are the consequences for that problem, or on the other side, what are the rewards that should there for me.
Yeah.
I think what we have is what I would call an awareness action gap. Anytime has an intent action gap. I mean, I want to, stop, get up in the morning and go for a walk. And that's why people kept the alarm in the evening. There was a person in me who said, no, I want to reduce a little bit of my weight. So I switched on the alarm and I kept the alarm there. And then at 5 o'clock, the alarm rang. And suddenly there's another hand that is about to go down. Yes. So there was all the intent, but somewhere the action has not happened. And then I go under the blank. I think most of our problems that we find, almost all of them, are an awareness action gap. The bridging awareness action gap is not about building more awareness. It's about action. And what we have realized is if we want to create action, our interventions have to be at the point of action, which means our solutions can't be awareness building things like 30-second commercials and other things. That point of action intervention is always a design intervention. And unless you have a design intervention, you can't solve it. Whether it's road accidents, whether it's girl trafficking, whether it's people, again, as we said, not exercising properly, whether it's the spread of teenage sexuality, managing it, they have to be design interventions. So we have to make this world a better place to live in. That you and all the designers who are listening to me, step in, you have a role to play.
Absolutely. I mean, that's so interesting. I have like a follow-up question to that. How do you come to know that it's not an awareness problem, but an awareness action gap? Because as designers, we're like somewhere psychologically trained or subconsciously trained to be like, oh, it's probably people don't know about this situation. So let's like figure out how to make that happen first. But very interestingly, I think, you can see that awareness is not the problem. How do you detect that, it's not the problem, the gap is the problem? Like what goes on in your mind when you see that, that that's not the main core issue?
You said this, you said see.
Yeah.
How do you see? The first thing when we are working on a problem is to go to where the problem is happening. Don't sit in the AC comfort of our world and then put some post-it and then try to solve it by sticking those post-it on the glass walls of your office. That's not the way to solve a problem. To solve a problem, go to where the problem is happening. If you want to solve the trespassing problem on the railway tracks of Mumbai, go to the railway tracks. If you actually want to solve the road accident problem, travel with the people, stand on the roads of this particular country. And then you start seeing. Now, when a train comes from there, man is crossing. And you ask them, do you not see the train? Yes, I saw the train crossing. Now, do you think you need awareness to tell him that train were to hit you, you will die? Now, certain things immediately you know. That means they know, but due to some reason, they decided to cross over to the other side. A certain thing, you might have to go deeper, but have you aware? I think they'll immediately say, yeah, I'm aware. A lot of people have told me, no, I know, I'm sorry, sir. I'm not supposed to cross the railway tracks. I won't do it again. Which means they're fully aware. They're not supposed to do this. But today I was a bit late, so I just did it. So it's a bit of an excuse they start giving. I think once you go to where the problem is happening, you start getting a feel of the problem. Is it awareness? Is it something else? But that within few days of spending time there, you'll get it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think you start caring about the problem. And when we're in our offices and we're on our screens, we distance ourselves from caring what we're actually trying to solve. And, I keep hearing this thing from, a lot of designers. They say that, but, like my organization doesn't allow me to go outside. My organization doesn't encourage research, or my organization is not giving me the time to get out of my desk and go into a space. What would you tell designers like them who would say, who feel restricted by not being able to do something like this, and they might really, really want to? Like, what advice would you give them?
Quit that organization. That's not the place you can ever flower as a designer. An organization that doesn't believe in you as a designer spending time at where the place is happening is not a place where you're going to flower as a designer. You will fail. And when you fail, no one is going to say that, oh, this is my organization's reason, policy that failed. They'll put the blame on you and your intervention.
Yeah.
You want to make your intervention far superior? You need to go to a place which encourages you.
Yeah.
And I love the word that you said, Dristy, caring for a problem. So much you care. And when you care for a problem, you're caring for the client who gave you that problem. You believe by caring for that problem, you're caring for the client, his bottom line or top line, and you're telling the client, hey, your problem, sir, is my problem. And I'm really, really care for you.
Yeah.
And that's when you start not just solving a problem, you start building that relationship with the client. The clients are going to really respect you and the work that you bring in. After spending a few days and you really held the problem and you looked at the problem and said, I know you.
Yeah.
I know you. And then you go and tell the client, sir, I know what this problem is.
Yeah.
And then, it's a different relationship that you build.
Yeah.
So not just, as I said, one, you really build that relationship with the client. Two is, once you know the problem, then you are able to develop interventions that are effective.
Yeah.
And that's when you become a good designer.
Yeah. It's absolutely important. I think also one major core issue that happens for this is that I think designers sometimes feel scared to speak up and to go to their client or to go to their boss and tell them that, listen, I need to be at the center of this problem. I'm not going to be able to solve it on my table. I think that's a equally important step. And then if you feel like your organization is maybe not supporting it, is when you're like, you're absolutely right. Like, why would you want to be in a space like that doesn't let you go into the center of where you can actually build change or create a difference? Sure.
I think it sends, I'll give you an example. I'm just talking to one of the largest mining companies in Australia. And so initially, they said, I said, I want to visit. And they said, stakeholder interviews. I said, no, it's not coming to your headquarters to see that. I want to know where in the mines where your problems are happening. And I want to see it. And I want to take a grip of that problem before I put my proposal there. The client was amazed. Someone at, senior people are coming all the way to the mines, which are all there, to get a grip of the problem before putting my proposal there. Now that tells the client, now this is the person who really is willing to, really, really stand by me to solve the problem. So when you send, you're actually, by insisting on you're sending the right signals to the client.
And that's important. That's what you need to stand up for. That's amazing. Oh my God, I could go on and on this, but let's go to the next question. Okay, so this is something that, we recently, while we were talking about ethically, thinking about neuroscience or utilizing neuroscience and the effects of it. So my question is that, is it ethical to subconsciously influence users?
First thing, there is nothing in the world that has only been used for good things. Anything in the world, including, let's call it the holiest and the purest of it, belief in God, has been used to create some of the worst wars and problems in this world. So there is nothing in the world, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's neuroscience, whether it's belief in religion, you can use it for good things, you can use it for bad things. That's one thing is very clear. Now, two, why am I talking about influencing people at an unconscious level? The last about 25 years of my career, as I said, ever since I felt the psychological theories, the traditional approach to human behavior isn't working. I've been going deeper to understand the human brain. And one of the things that is clearly emerging from a scientific point of view is that of the 11 million bits of processing that we have, just 77 of them work at a conscious level, which means biologically, our brain is created to work at a non-conscious level. Now, and when you look at the energy consumption of our brain, just 13 watts is what is being used up.
You buy light bulbs.
Exactly. It's almost a light bulb. But it's the most energy efficient machine in the world. Recently, there was a man versus machine competition, the AlphaGo versus Lee Sedol. Interestingly, Lee Sedol was burning up 13 watts, whereas the energy consumption of AlphaGo was 200,000 watts. So that's the difference. Now, I'm not getting into the machine AI. We'll talk about it later. But I just want to mention, to maintain this energy efficient machine across there, almost all our processing moves into the non-conscious. And look at our own learning. At the initial stages of learning, as for example, cycling or learning, all of them are consciously thought through. The moment you learn, your brain moves it into non-conscious. And then you're driving without where legs should be in the accelerator or the brake or which gear. Nothing is consciously thought through. You're speaking to your partner as you're driving. So almost all the activities that we do, including the sentences that I'm creating, is not a conscious process. The words that is coming in to the next word I'm speaking is not a consciously word through. I know broadly what I'm speaking about, and then the words, the proper grammar in English, the right language is coming through, all working at a non-conscious level. So this, I would always say, is the most hidden biological truth about human behavior, that 99.999% of brain processes happen at a non-conscious level. We have to accept it. It's not an issue of ethics or not ethics. It's an issue of accepting the biological truth and using that understanding to design things to solve some of the most significant problems in the world.
So to a certain extent, you're saying that knowledge is power in this case. And the more knowledge you have, eventually you'll have a choice to whether follow it ethically or unethically. And people have used both paths according to, I guess, where they feel they want to draw a border at. But is it saying that don't think about it from an ethical, unethical point of view, but think about it from understanding the problem and seeing what is the influence of how it's going to get solved as you move forward? Or do you still feel that as designers, we need to have a boundary of ethics when we really start to understand human behavior and, how the brain really thinks?
Of course, ethics, you can have it at an individual level. You can have it at a very broad levels. Let me also give a perspective on why this understanding is helpful, because as I said, there are people who are going to use this for wrong purposes. For example, the terrorist organizations who hire youngsters, and then get them on to do what I call completely nefarious, wrong activities. And we need to now get these kids, get them de-radicalized. How do you do that? We need to then understand what is the process these terrorist organizations are adopting to turn these lovely young kids into terrorists. So to reverse the whole process, you need to know the process they were using, and basically all non-conscious processes. So even to undo the bad things that are happening there, you need to know this particular process part of it. Two, obviously at an ethical level, someone might say, I don't want to use this science to get people to smoke more. I don't want people to use this to say, let's get them to drink more. That's a personal choice of ethics. I leave it to different organizations to decide what to do. But broadly, we know in a society what is right, what is wrong. Using the science for those wrong things is wrong. Let's not do it. But doing this for a whole lot of right things, reducing girl trafficking in this country, reducing road accidents in this country, reducing teenage sexuality and HIV in the world, is it wrong? Absolutely not wrong. Absolutely, I don't see any problem there. And if the traditional conscious solutions were giving me say 1% success rate, and whereas this is giving me, say, 20% or 30% or 40% success rate, should I not use it?
Yeah.
I think we can, and I think I have found that we actually solve the problems of the world better when we really understand the biological truth about the functioning of the human brain.
Interestingly, while you were explaining this, something just hit in my mind. I feel like this is where heroes and villains are born. When you talk about, when you look at it from an impact point of view or a number point of view, it's a choice. It's a conscious choice.
Yeah.
And that's where like most villains have this dialogue where they say that if I won't do it, someone else will. And that I feel like it plays such an important role when you look at it with such a beautifully neutral point of view. And then it's a human choice to choose between what kind of ethics you want to follow or what you don't, and which is where organizations make that choice.
Exactly.
And very interestingly, you use the word non-conscious instead of subconscious. Why not subconscious? Why non-conscious?
The reason is every word, the moment I speak, will have a certain previous memory associated with it. The word subconscious was predominantly used to explain a Freudian approach to things that are working below the level of consciousness. And Freud's was actually intuitively was right, because he's a neuroscientist.
Yeah.
But he didn't have any fMRI or any of the other machines or even EEG to sort of really go deeper into what's really in the brain of the late 19th century or early 20th century. So he sort of thought what could be happening at the subconscious level. And all that he assumed, all this sexual frustration, something else, childhood, those are all wrong. So the moment I mentioned subconscious, to me, is all attributed to Freudian approach. And I want to tell people, no, I'm not talking about Freudian part. There's another word, if you see, I don't use it, unconscious.
Yeah.
We all fall unconscious. Maybe we didn't have enough food or there's a lack of glucose. I fell unconscious, which means I don't even know what really happens there. So I don't use the word unconscious. So as I started, then I'm one of the first in the world to start using a neuroscience approach to human behavior. I said, we need to create some new vocabularies. And I started using the word non-conscious. Now, non-conscious means I'm aware of what's happening. Now, I know I'm sitting and talking to you. Whereas when my position of my leg, the position of my tongue, the position of nothing has been consciously thought through. So I'm not unconscious. I'm conscious of what I'm doing. Neither what I'm speaking about, right through when I'm speaking about, is not a Freudian approach to things that are below. It's a very efficient, extremely efficient, energy efficient, and very effective way of brain processing things around. To me, it shows the superbness of in a cricketer, for example, he plays a shot in 0.01, 0.02 seconds, he plays a shot. It's human efficiency at its best. Or it is where a creative person suddenly says, oh, okay, I've got an idea. Where did the idea come from? Not at a conscious level. She might have been taking bath or might have been walking on the beach in the morning and with their friend, and suddenly says, oh, I have an idea. Then where did the idea come from? It's the processing of that was happening while the person was sleeping, while all of it coming together. It's one of the most beautiful, amazing, processes of the human brain.
Yeah.
We can't put it under any other term. We need a new term. And that's why I use the word non-conscious.
I love it because I think that just brings the ownership back to the person who then doesn't, it's like subconscious. I agree, like to a certain extent, subconscious is just, or unconscious is just evading the responsibility.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, I didn't know. But, it's like, what you're doing. And I think the more you hold yourself responsible towards it, the more you'll be able to advocate change.
Exactly.
Which is amazing. Right. So now we know the difference, why we need to say non-conscious and not subconscious, which is why, my next question is, most designers, even leaders, try to change behavior consciously, but you believe real change can happen non-consciously. Can you explain that with a story or example?
One of the largest road builders in India came to us and said, they heard of what we do and said, can you guys reduce the accidents that are happening out there? So we went to the roads The Golden Quadrangle was being built. The Hyderabad-Bangalore highway was the first highway. They gave it to us. And 60, 70 kilometer stretch is what this is all about. So we went there and we found the traditional solutions are there. Drive slowly, monsoon ahead. I'm sure Bombay-Pune expressway, there are poetries written, divorce, speed, embrace, marry, safety and all that. All those things are written. Now, first of all, just for someone who's driving to look at that and read it itself is going to take a long time. But when we looked at the data and we realized despite all that is done there, which has traditionally been done, the accidents are very large. A large number of accidents happening there. So for us, straight away, it means I think there is a problem. That means these are not working. So I think we said, okay, villages are there. So there was a place where a large number of accidents were happening. Villages were crossing. And here, although we're told to drive at 80 or 100 kilometers, you're driving 120, 140 kilometers, a lot of accidents happening. And when we went there, we saw village ahead, accidents, 18 accidents that happened in the last 6 months. A lot of those conscious messaging is there. No one is slowing down. So what did we do? We said, let's understand the non-conscious of processes of driving. What makes a person decide whether his leg should be in the accelerator or on the brake? And we realized from various studies that no one looks at a speedometer. But then how is he deciding? Or she is deciding to drive. And that's when a design insight came to us and said, I decide whether my leg should be in the accelerator or on the brake is how things are going past us. Okay, now that's what we would call from a non-conscious design insight. Now once I provide that, then I go and tell the designer, now let's play a trick on that. Now what did my designers do? They said, okay, if things are going past us, let's play a trick. So we have, perpendicular lines to the road, white lines are there. Now what the team has done is, the white line starts moving, but what they have done is purposely they reduce the gap between the white lines as it appears near the village. Now, suddenly the white lines are moving, suddenly the white line starts moving much faster.
Yeah.
The leg automatically moves at a non-conscious level, from the accelerator to the brake. And what did we saw? We found across 15 highways in this country, we have reduced road accidents by close to 69%.
Wow.
And that's what, there are no signages, no language. And also in a country like India, where there are almost 22 different official languages, there was no conscious signages was not required. Now, this is what I would call a universal approach to dealing with some of these human behavior problems. And this is non-conscious design at its best.
That's amazing. I mean, the kind of change that you can bring about, I feel like, you're giving us so much depth because design felt 2D and then it started getting 3D in its language. And now this just feels like 8D, which you don't understand when you go to a movie theater. Like, how can it be like 8D? Like, what could be more in this? And when you mix it with neuroscience, I think it adds so much depth and it actually makes it so much easier to solve problems after you just have that insight in place. So that's amazing. And it's been over a decade that, we've been designing in India. More than that, I'm not considering the period of advertisement and graphic designing and then UX UI that got introduced into the country. But what we're still trying to understand is that a lot of organizations don't believe in investing in design still. So what would you say in that case? Like, how do we as designers convince organizations to actually value design and invest in design further? Do you think it's us? Do you think it's them? Like, where do you think that the gap lies?
There's no gap. I think the way we put that across to the clients. Clients have a problem.
Yeah.
Now, I think what we need to, when we walk to the client's places, we have to believe, hey, client, you want to solve the problem? Obviously, the answer is going to be yes.
Yeah.
All that we need to do is hold us responsible for giving you results. No client is going to say no. If you go and tell a client, whatever that problem is, we will solve it for you. Or we will solve it better than the way you're doing it right now. No client will say, no, I don't want to solve my problem.
Yeah.
I think the way we put across, I think as designers, as I said, we need to be confident about our craft. But for that, of course, we need to work very, very hard. And I have seen in my 35 years of working whenever you go to a client and you give the confidence to the client that I will solve the problem for you, no client will ever say, no, I don't want to solve it. They'll always give the project to you. And at the price that you ask for, because you're willing to be held responsible for results. It's not just about handing over something.
Yeah.
You have to, when you give a design intervention, you have to say that I will implement it at the point of action where the problem is happening. And I will show it to you. I will show it to you that I give you results. No client. No client will say, no, I don't want that. I think that approach is what is required.
You have to fix it from our side more than expecting it to get fixed from the other.
The client always wants to solve his problem.
Yeah.
No client who doesn't want to solve his problem. It is how we want to solve the problem.
Yeah.
They just want solution and then collect the money and go. No. A lot of clients will say, no. I am not one of those, banks that generally give you, say, no, you solve my problem and I'm willing to do that. I think the change has to come in from us, the designers.
So, following on this part where now I think it's very clear for us that we've understood that it's not about the gap, but it's about how designers really pitch themselves forward to their clients and hold themselves responsible for the results that are there. How can designers communicate that they can take ownership of the impact while showcasing their proposals to clients?
One, as I mentioned, I think even before meeting the client also, nothing wrong. Even as you're discussing it, if you already have seen as being at the point of action, and there are various ways you can actually give those, what I call confidence to the client that, see, I'm someone who's willing to hold the problem and really understand the problem. To me, just visiting that particular, the place where things are happening, or even reading up a fair bit about what has been the traditional approach to dealing with this particular problem.
Yeah.
So you're walking in with the client by saying, I know you or anyone else have been trying to solve the problem in this particular way. Now hold us responsible for making sure we are not going to come up with a replica of that. Now that itself tells the client that these guys are going to look things in a different way. Now that put obviously onus of responsibility on us to make sure that we will do things differently from what the traditional approach is. Two, the reason I'm saying that we will be able to come up with a new approach is because this neuroscience approach does bring in new perspectives, new insights into the problem as to why people are doing what they're doing. And obviously because of that, you're also definitely able to come up with interventions that are very distinctly different from a traditional approach, because that's conscious, rational approach to dealing with it. Here you're mostly doing with what I call non-conscious, emotional approach. These approaches are very different. So you will come up with a solution which is very different from what has been traditionally done. Two, you also said, I'm going to implement it for you in a small scale where it is required. No, I can tell you that is actually one of the things the clients love to hear, that the team is willing to stand by me, to prove it to me that what we gave is just not one concept. It is something that I will be held responsible for the implementation and be there at the implementation levels. And the good thing is that even if you put your pricing based on it, initial days of my son, I used to tell the client 10%, 15% of my income, I'll take it only after the results have happened. The client's confidence in you at that point, post that, is of a very different level.
Yeah, I'm part of the world at that point. It's like putting a little bit of your stake in to show how confident you are in trying to...
See, it's a team game. Client that asks is not about client getting some business out of the client and go. It is standing with the client, standing by the client, helping to solve the problem. You and me together, we're doing it. That's a spirit we have to bring into any client design firm relationship.
Yeah. It's a sense of being a partner and not just someone who's been hired to do the job.
Yeah.
Like a contractor. It's like a distance between you and your client.
And the good thing is the client can see that. We know in even in our personal relationship, who are people who are sort of distant from you, who are people who are genuinely interested in having a communication with you. You and I know that. It's exactly what happens in business relationships too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really opened my mind in knowing that this right now just opened my mind and also understanding that, your business relationship or your identity when you're doing business versus when you're deciding your friends has crossovers between them. And if we treat our clients as acquaintances, we're never going to connect to them on a deeper level compared to treating them as our partners or like not a best friend, like that's where the professional line gets drawn. But the idea is that how you think and how you care when you are with a best friend versus just an acquaintance.
Exactly. I think the word you said initially care.
Again.
I think the client has to believe that I really care for you. This team, my design team, they really care for me. Once the client gets that feeling, then, or the relationship is on a different level altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. Even some of the things that you mentioned, that being at the center of the problem, going and being there, right? Means you're putting yourself among human beings who are dealing with that problem at that point of time, which is what we as designers work called human-centered design, right? But you have this thing where you say that human-centered design is not enough. So what do you believe that it is missing there?
See, human-centered design. So, okay, I'm sitting on a chair and I tell you, the designer, this is not too comfortable. Okay. Now what you do is, then I'm sure you might design a chair which is more human-centered. Yeah, a bit more support at the back, a bit more support at the side.
Yeah.
And say, here is. And that's what, for example, one of the human-centered design, one of the biggest names is IDEO. They said, kids are holding the toothbrush like adult, and then they're brushing like that was difficult. I'm sure when they did the research, they found the kids actually gripped the toothbrush. So what do? They actually said, now make that place where the grip happens a bit more broader so the kids can nicely grip it. Now that's human-centered design. Excellent.
Yeah.
But a lot of problems that my team had to work on in India was they're using datuns.
I know.
Now I'm asked to now get them to use toothpaste.
Yeah.
Now that's a behavior change. Or the other problem is people are now defecating in the open. Now I have to get them to now come to a toilet and saying, build a toilet and build it. It's not making the defecation in the open better by providing water supply and other things out there. It's not. That's human-centered design. But my job, the government told us, is that I want to get more to the toilet. This behavior change. So in human-centered design, you're making an existing human behavior more comfortable. Perfect. Design as a role. Continue doing it. But a whole lot of problems that we have in the world is where there is a behavior, they're defecating in the open. I want them to change that behavior and get them on to create a new behavior. That is design for behavior change. Now, design for behavior change in that way is very different, much, much more difficult than human-centered design. And we have to approach design for behavior change in a very different way.
This pretty interesting, and most of your examples involve environmental change also. But how would you put this example for digital designers? Because when we're designing an app or a dashboard or sometimes a website, we might just be like, am I really driving any change? Or it just starts becoming human-centered because you want to expand that space on the screen around the person. And how do you think for people who have to deal with a lot, like designers who have to deal with a lot of digital interface design, how do you think that they could apply some of these learnings at that space without maybe having a lot of environment, like space to change the environment also along with it?
I think that's where you're as a designer, my job is UI, UX. So I just look like this and then look at and start working. No.
Yeah.
Your job, I think you said that beautifully this week. There's a whole context in which the environment works. I need to understand the context and I need to change that context if need be. I'll give you an example. It's there in my book. The Mangalore accident, air accident that happens as the flight was landing, 86 seconds on, there are 9 warnings, 6 from the machine and 3 from the co-pilot not to land this plane. Okay. Now, as a designer, you can say, oh, I did my job. The screens were doing its job. Its announcements were happening at the right well. Sunday, I can do it. But why did he ignore that particular warnings? Or could he actually ignore that warning completely? What could cause it? And then you realize, okay, he was sleeping. There was something that sleep had an impact on the way this UI/UX interaction happens. As a designer, should I not be aware of that? Of course you should be aware of it. So designers are not people who are so narrow-minded. You need to take the whole context of the decision-making, understand every bit of it. And with that understanding is where you need to bring in, your desires.
Yeah.
And I think designers, that's why I said, the wider and the deeper the grip that you have with the problem, then our ability to actually design what I call a holistic design solution then becomes, an automatic thing.
Yeah. I think we're all, to a certain extent, get stuck on the BRD or the problem statement given to us. And then we realize that, oh, it's that what I have to solve. But what you're telling us to do is to have that, but look beyond it and get out of that space to understand that maybe you need to solve a larger problem than that what's just stated in that document.
We have to redefine the client gives us a brief. There's only so much. Like, for example, when we were working on the trespassing issue in Mumbai, the client told, the railways told us, please stop trespassing. Can you guys come up with a design solution to do that? So what did we do? We actually narrowed it down because we spent 2 weeks on the railway tracks of Mumbai, and we realized my school is on one side and my house on the other side. So we went back and told the railways, I cannot stop trespassing in Mumbai. It is impossible. But I can reduce the number of accidents, number of deaths that happen because of that. So we redefined the briefs. But I can tell you, clients actually love you for it. The problem that you gave, either we said, no, I think your problem is not this narrow. Unless you solve these contextual and other problems, this problem will continue to happen. So the moment you start redefining it, much before even you started designing it, the clients are going to really love you for it because you start taking a much stronger grip of the problem.
Exactly. Absolutely. I think, guys, this is just like a sign that we need to sometimes when we get briefs, we need to actually work on redefining them rather than just following them blindly. And I think that is where, when you come back to solving the problem, you're actually solving it with a much broader perspective than just that specific line that's written in a document. Beautiful. That's amazing. And, another thing that you mentioned was that research is, you didn't exactly mention it, but it's very important as part of also broadening the statement, which is research, doing your background, understanding what are you trying to solve. And oftentimes, as designers, we get this great chance to do research on the field or off the field or have that experience, and that makes us feel more confident about our work. But we still see that confidence doesn't exactly exist with the kind of research that we do. So, this leads me to asking you that design research is too much on the surface level, I believe, what we're doing. And that's why it looks like failure. And that's something that you've also told us. What does a deep understanding of human behavior actually look like in practice?
Just spend time in the context of the problem.
As much time.
I'm going back to the railway example. It's from VT station to Kalyan is about 66 kilometers. Now, thousands of accidents have happened on that. And we have a record, of course, where all it has happened, which means almost every meter of that, or in some places, me and my team has visited each of those. That means every one of those.
How many times?
I think I have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on the railway tracks of Mumbai. And today, confidently, I can tell you, nobody understands that particular problem in the world as much as I have, because no one has spent so much time there. My team has spent on road safety. Every highway that we have spent, we again have spent hundreds of hours on the railway track, the roads of this particular country. For girl trafficking, again, the number of hours and days that we spend in the villages of 24 Parganas in West Bengal or Warangal in Andhra Pradesh, where the girls are getting trafficked, to where the girls are brought to the red light areas of Mumbai, all the porn movie places and others in the red light areas of Mumbai, my team has spent. And my team knows the whole context in which the girl trafficking happens. My team does not give the research to, in Africa because we don't understand the language. Yes, but we have done work across all the countries in Africa. But my team has been there. It's just not that you sort of understand the language, but once you are in that context, once you're there, the body language of the people, it all gives you cues. And later the translator tells you, this is what the person said. Yeah, you almost would say, oh, I knew what they're saying. It is being in the context. I think research is not about giving that to a third party and third party doing it. Research is not even about your strategic team does it and my designer's creative team sits in the office. No. And I think I always have insisted at Final Mile that the design team and the strategic team they do the research themselves. Obviously, we developed a new research technique because based on the Neuroscience, but that involvement, and because that designer knows the context in which the solutions are going to happen. So he knows, okay, in the road, there's only so much space.
Yeah.
Okay, when I'm setting up a signage now, what should be the size of the signage? They know it. They know the overall surroundings, what it is. So when I'm designing, the context in which the problem is happening is very much alive for me. I think that is what gives confidence to develop extremely powerful solutions. And that's the type of research that we need to bring into our work. Yep.
I have a counter to this. There was a time when I had also done research in Dharavi that was there. And there was a moment as a researcher that I got very emotionally involved in trying to solve the problem. So I feel like to a certain extent, when you're doing it through a screen, you have a sort of distance where you could probably concentrate on solving the problem. But I absolutely agree that you need to be in the middle of the problem to actually see what's not visible through just a screen. Do you feel like when you conduct research on the field, that a certain bias, and we always have this argument as researchers that don't be biased, be very logical when you're taking this approach. But I think the trigger is that when you go on the field, you start feeling the same way, or there are more emotions involved that might help you solve the problem really well. But do you feel like as a researcher, a certain bias could come up because of being too involved or too close to certain problems that are there? Do you feel like that plays a role or influences some of your decisions?
Actually, the reverse.
All right.
Biases happen when I don't even know what the context is. Sitting far away from there, I assume this is what it is. And my own assumption of, there are people I know, my advertising days is Kolhapur. Oh, rural means Kolhapur. That's their assumption. Their assumption of what a rural part of India means Kolhapur.
Yeah.
These are all South Bombay kids who have not even, for them, beyond Bandra is rural or semi-urban. And then, Kolhapur is actually rural. No, it's I was representing a set of people.
It's all right.
Yes.
I'm totally pro for it. So I agree. It is most of us who are not really moving out of Bandra.
Exactly. But when you go to the context, the words that you use, the empathy, you start feeling, you start being one of them.
Yeah.
You start feeling, okay, now this is why openification, why they're doing it. Now why they're actually going so far away. And then you suddenly realize all the ladies they're all going together. They all are chatting away. They're all having a nice time when they go to defecate. It's not an individual activity. Yeah, it was because in our urban area, defecation means it's something I do in my private moment, not for them.
Yeah.
And when you sit there, you suddenly see them all sitting there and chatting as they're all, sitting behind bushes. Yeah, they have their normal conversations are going on.
Yeah.
So things change. The biases are because we are not present in the point of action. Once you're there, all the biases go away. You start empathizing.
Perfect. That's amazing. Just what I wanted to.
Okay.
So, we're going to move on to a different set of questions that's there. As much as I really want to keep sticking for this, subject. But I want to know a little bit more about your work, Biju, and about the Indian design education system. I think that's something that I have been wanting to see a lot of change in. And, when we had this conversation with you behind the screens, you spoke about trying to create change from where it starts. And that is what I love about everything that you do and how you solve problems, that you go to the starting point in the core of the context, and then you start from there and not, try to solve it in the middle or towards the end, or just do like a sweep walk, and be like, hey, we solved this problem. So, there's going to have a lot of depth coming from you in this space. But my question on this would be that you're on a mission to reform design education. You even changed the BITS design syllabus. What are the critical gaps in your traditional design curriculum, and how are you addressing them?
I've been teaching in business schools for the last about almost 30 years. And I also been to the design schools. I've been talking about, at least for the last 10, 15 years, I've been been to various design schools. Various professors in NID, for example, have been my good friends. Praveen, who was until recently the director of NID, Ahmedabad, was a good friend of mine. So I used to go there very often. And one of the things I used to tell Praveen and a whole lot of design people that I know has been, you need to change your syllabuses. And one of the things I often told them was, I think the amount of focus that you're giving on understanding human behavior, whatever you were discussing at the initial part of the researching of human behavior, is right now getting very little focus. And most of what I said, this whole ethnographic, being in the context, was missing there. And the second was obviously about the future, which we, of course, will speak about, I'm sure, about, with AI and all these new developments coming in. Now, how do you really change it? But, NID, a lot of these institutions have their own syllabuses, and nothing much could actually be done then. I think my best opportunity came in when I was made one of the members of the advisory council for BITS Design School. And Nandita Ibrahim, who's the CEO, the dean, she is a visionary. And I think she spoke to a lot of us while the syllabuses or the curriculum of that new design school was being developed. And you won't be surprised, Mr. Kumaramangalam Birla, he was very keen that the whole education system of the Aditya Birla group, which is BITS Pilani Engineering, BITS SOM, which is an MBA school, the BITS Design School, he believed all this has to get integrated. So he has a vision. And I think it was so lucky then, so when the BITS Design School curriculum was being developed, they were very open to try out new things on how design education could actually be improved. And I think even when the design curriculum was being developed, I think again they had obviously some of the best minds in the world was there. Don was there, who was actually he's there on the design. And the last advisory board meeting that we had, I still remember he came with a lot of notes on what all should be there. And after the BITS, the professors had made their recommendation on what all things they've done, all that Don said was, hey, I came in with a lot of things to tell you guys as what you should be doing, but you're already doing it. Now, just imagine when Don Norman is saying that, I think the curriculum is really, really good, which means it is really good. I think that's where I'm really happy. There are some new design schools that are really looking at design education in a new way. It's a good beginning. And I hope more and more design schools start adopting these new thoughts of approaching design. And that'll be a great beginning.
Yeah.
Great beginning.
Can you give us a sneak peek? Can you tell us what are you doing differently compared to the traditional design education that's been going on?
Obviously, as I mentioned, the focus on human behavior and understanding human behavior is clearly a focus out there. The other is, it's a bit of an exploration. In the first year, for example, I think we're making sure that, you don't say, I want to become product designer. No one knows what product design is, what UI, UX design is, what is experience design is. So the first year is all about sort of exploring and understanding the larger world of design. It is somewhere towards second year on, you sort of slightly moving closer. Third to fourth year is where you really start focusing on things around. And obviously, we also have taken into consideration all the new facet of technology and how it is actually changing the design world. So some of the things that we really wanted to be making sure that the design students learn is there.
Yeah.
So it's a gamut of things. And I'm sure when you look at the syllabus and go to bits, you will see all this. I'm very happy with what they have developed.
Have you also challenged the way traditional education happens, where you have to study a lot of theory and then give an exam post that and then move on to the next stage of class? Like, have you had that discussion of maybe let's not do any exams, or maybe have more practical experience in place? Like, have you tried to challenge that piece also?
No, I don't think I'm getting that involved at the advisory levels. But one of the things which was very heartening was, it's my personal view, more so when I see some of the designers who step out, somehow this design research has suddenly become a job in itself. And which is sort of intellectualizing. I only give intellectual outputs. I strongly believe designers, you have to create things.
Yeah.
And one of the things I saw in the first design, our meeting in BITS was, she showed us a lot of artifacts that the students have created. Trillion creators, which means they are using their hands, they're using their minds, they're creating things around there. To me, designers are not just about some intellectual garden, and I do design thinking, but to me, designers are about creating things, inventing things around there, in which I could see in the BITS design school, a lot of focus on creating things.
Oh yeah, that's really nice. That's amazing. But yeah, that covers a lot around, putting your hands into the design education system that is there. You describe the human brain as a 680 million-year-old machine. Wow. How can designers practically leverage neuroscience principles to create more intuitive designs?
As you rightly said, yes, I think the human brain is a 680 million-year-old machine, which means a lot of problems that clients are asking us to solve, the human brain has been solving it over the last 680 million years in a certain way. How to make sure that you don't get into a danger. I'm sure there's a way in which you've been doing it. And if you can really understand how the brain was doing that, it possibly will you don't have to replicate it. I'm sure you get inspired by it and you can actually use that. For example, that's when you realize that, emotions are not bad. Because there is this belief that, emotions, actually affect our decision making. So please don't bring emotions into our decision making. But when you really look at the history of the human brain, you realize the emotion of fear has actually saved far more human lives than all of modern medicine put together. So emotion of fear is actually one of the most useful emotions you can ever bring to get people to behave in a certain way. Bring in emotion of fear into your design, and obviously your design will become far more effective than a traditional way of conscious, words being written out there. But then how do you bring in emotions of fear? And if I do this, and you thought there was something in the studio where I saw scared, and that fear, because you didn't see what was there, you saw only my face.
Yeah.
That fear got transferred onto you because you have something called mirror neurons.
Yeah.
Now, mirror neurons, how does it work? Normally it works in this, what's it happen now with that face-to-face interaction. The next best is a photograph. Now, a lot of our work, I think today, I tell my team uses photographs. And we are the first in the world to use in signages photographs. Now, that is when you have understood the work of mirror neurons, the fear of, how emotions are transferred from the brain and bring it into your design. And instead of graphic designs, actually now bring in appropriate photographs where obviously you get people to act it out and this becomes a better. And that is how you sort of take 680 million years of working onto a design that you're actually developing. And all that was just traditionally a graphic design of showing this is danger, do not cross the railway tracks.
Yeah.
Now you show a photograph which almost represents the danger of being hit by a tree. That's the difference.
Does this give like a sort of a confirmation that we're very visual creatures?
Of the 11 million bits of processing, our brain has about 11 million bits of processing.
Yeah.
Of that, 10 million of them sit in the visual level. So communication should predominantly be visual.
Wow.
It should be visual.
Is this why most of our clients or the people that we work with cannot visualize what sometimes designers can, also like connecting the dot to another part, where a lot of times if people are visual creatures and so much of our brain, relies on visual work or visual confirmation that, okay, now I can maybe see it or visualize it. Do you feel like that a lot of designers sometimes tend to describe what they want to do, what kind of change they want to bring, but the clients or people who are trying to understand it can't really visualize it like they can? Do you feel like designers have larger power of visualization, but we don't communicate that through clearly because of that?
Exactly. I think the issue is, as a designer, you have the idea. Now you want to communicate that to the client. If you're trying to communicate that in the words, which is hearing is about just 100,000 or the 11 million, which means that's not the effective way to do it. Now, the client is not listening to me, he's not agreeing to what I'm doing. Did you help the client to visualize it? Please visualize your idea and show it to the client. Hey, this is how it's going to look. This is a rough idea right now, but this is how broadly look.
Yeah.
Okay. The client will look at it and say, this is a great idea.
Yeah.
So instead of making PowerPoint slides with words,
Yeah.
please bring it alive in visuals. Bring alive your ideas in little sketches that you do. People will be able to visualize and so obviously understand your idea far better. Yeah, make our whole communication far more visual, and it will always work. It'll be much more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes so much sense. And that's where I think we become better visualizers with our users and our customers also, because that's where the maximum impact lies.
Exactly.
All right. On to the next question. You often say the problem is not our skill, but it's our depth. And I've heard this multiple amount of times, is that a lot of times we think on the surface, but not on the depth, the T that I always see so many people talk about. So I feel like our skills is something that's easy to explain or easy to say that you lack this skill, but it's so difficult to explain that you lack the depth that exists. So what practical steps can a designer take to go from peripheral thinking to deeper design thinking?
I said, I'm the perfect example. From a skill point of view, intelligence point of view, I'll always say I'm an average, maybe slightly above average. I'm not a super intelligent guy. I cannot solve a client, someone gives me a problem. There are colleagues of mine who can look at a problem within 1 second. Wow, this is what the problem is all about. I'm not that intelligent. But I go to the depth of things. So I walk the problem. I walk the streets. So I bring in a lot of depth to my way of working. It sort of compensates for my lack of skill. My average skills are compensated with the depth that I bring into the reading that I do, the amount of understanding that I do it. And I have found that the clients also then starts, as we said before, even the beliefs they have in you actually is much, much more when you have a depth to the problem. So depth actually compensates for some of the average skills, and maybe some of the people listening to me are super in skill. Then you can bring depth, then you become a superlative person across there. But I would always go for depth over skills, because skills I think are there in all of us. But if you bring the depth of understanding of the problem, of depth of your variety of homework that you do, that you bring in to your skill, then overall the output that comes out from this combination will be brilliant.
I agree with you. Like, even I believe that I'm not that skilled as a designer, but I love to go into the depth of things. But that's where, I kept wondering that there are, that there are two types of skills, which is hard skills and soft skills. Now, when you go into the depth side of things, don't you feel like sometimes skills like observation skills or intuition, or like, these are also softer pieces, which isn't like not hard skills, but these skills, when they're not developed, they restrict you from going into the depth of trying to solve a problem, or even the depth of research that you do?
I think you put it well, the soft skill. And I think one of the soft skill I always use is, I always take the client's problem as my problem. It's somehow automatically, to me, the client doesn't have to tell me. I sort of own my client's problem. So there is a lot of ownership that bring in. And suddenly my middle class values, suddenly come back and say, I'm taking, some money from the client. And somewhere my mother has always told me that, when you take your money, treat it carefully. But if it's someone else's money, it could be someone else's umbrella that you actually borrowed and you're going out. And you be very, very, very careful about that umbrella. So to me, one of the soft skills I bring in is that middle class value of, if it's someone else's problem and someone else is trusting you, and put your heart and soul into what you do. I think those are some of the skills that any of us, even with average intelligence, if you bring that into your professional life, suddenly you definitely become a much better professional. You can have the greatest skills in the world, but you don't care a damn about the client. You just see it as a transaction and do it. Even with that greatest skill, somewhere, I don't think you will actually go on to develop brilliant design solutions.
Yeah, it's like you can use your background to empower you to take things more seriously rather than taking it more, frivolously, or like not really caring about what you do. I think that's where, a lot of people say that we're very interested in passionate people, but where does passion come from? It comes from how much you care, through which how deep you can go,
Exactly.
through which then you're between the problem and then you become a much better designer because of that. So they're all interlinked with each other in order to get you to that point.
Yeah.
How would you, let's say that there are a lot of designers that we have in India, lots of them, right? Like I love the fact that that India as a country is becoming a design intensive country and not just a great at business, great at commerce only country, and that creativity is energizing. And when you're young and when you're in college, you're very excited and you feel like the whole world is your, oyster, and you can do whatever, like you'll be whatever you want to be. But for the designers who get older or get stuck in a specific system, how would you, and you see sometimes the depth goes away for them because of practice. And you'd mentioned to me earlier that change in an older person is harder than a change in a younger person. But somewhere older designers also want to experience that passion or joy again, but somewhere they've been stuck through that, and depth might be a perfect answer to get into it because you have these years of experience somewhere backing you up. Okay. How do you think that we can make designers care again at an older stage that they are in to actually utilize some of the things that you've spoken about in today's podcast?
One of the things is, I always believe most about human behavior. I don't know about other sciences. The more you think you understand human behavior, it actually makes me scared that I don't know enough about human behavior. Actually, maybe 10 years back or 15 years back, when someone throws a problem at you, I'll solve it for you right now. I know what the solutions are. Today, when clients tell me a problem, I get scared. Because I respect the client. That means, all the intelligence and all that the client has done so far, he hasn't managed to solve the problem. Now, will he be able to solve it? So I always begin any project that I do with a little fear of failure in me, that I don't know enough. And honestly, I walk in that. So to me, I don't believe I'm a person with 35 years of experience. For every problem that I face, to me, it's a new problem. And I know I have to start learning all of it. I just start reading all about it, about that. There is this problem I mentioned, Australia, which is about the science. It's about fatigue. Now, I know I have to go and read more about fatigue. All that I know I would have done is not going to solve it. So I'll never cut paste and old this one onto it, which I also do even for my presentations. As I said, I teach a lot of business schools or design schools. I never make the same presentation again. I'll always have told myself, There has to be something. Today afternoon, I have 2 sessions. Now, there's almost the same thing I taught in IIM Mumbai. It's in IIM classes, but there are new slides I'll add. It's also my way of trying to say that every day you have to be adding some new learning to what what you've done and what you know so far. But it also comes with a feeling of inadequacy that I have. Especially with human behavior, there's no way I can say I know it all. There's no way.
I thank you so much for saying this, because I think as designers who've been over a decade, we have some fear in us, but I feel like to a certain extent, we don't understand that fear keeps us humble. And the humbleness is what makes you amazing at what you do. Instead, I feel like a lot of us look at fear like we don't know enough, so we might not be able to solve that for you. But that in itself is strength to figure out what you don't know about. So I think like every single person in each of the episodes have mentioned the word humble, but I think just the way you've explained this, Biju, you're the symbol of humbleness with the amount of experience that you've had. And I think a lot of us older designers, would look up to you in this case, because that's exactly, I think, also what keeps your passion of design alive, no matter how old you get. So thank you so much for mentioning this. I think this is super important for all of us. Some validation inside that it's okay if you're scared. All right. So, we really went to the depth of this question. So, to go to the next one, what's one subject or skill you think every design student should be learning that they currently aren't?
It's about how the human brain functions.
Absolutely.
I think the more we understand the functioning of the human brain, better will be our understanding of human behavior, better will be at the designs we create. There is so much to learn from the functioning of the human brain. And I think I would definitely say what I call 101 neuroscience, or some of the basic things of it, should become integral to all design education.
Yeah. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. I think after this, all of us will want this. Can you tell us some 101 neuroscience principles or behavior principles that could be helpful for us to get into?
I would strongly exhort to the designers to sort of look at the work of, there's a 19th century physicist from Germany called Hermann Helmholtz.
Okay.
And I think one of the things Helmholtz did was exactly this. He tried to understand the human brain, and he calls it unconscious inferences. Basically, are these fundamental rules that the brain has been using for the last 680 million years. And today, even when any project that we deal with, the first thing I ask our team is, look at it from a fundamental human nature point of view. So, for example, financial services. It's immediately the client is getting the people to save for future, because that's what financial service is all about. The first question I ask is the human brain geared for that behavior? And then you go a bit more deeper and you realize, future. When did the human brain started thinking of future? It's just about 8,000 years back when we started agriculture. Until then, we never thought of the future.
Yeah.
We just live for the day. That means of the 680 million years, just about 8,000 years we live started thinking of tomorrow. But for large part, we were just living for that day, which means at a fundamental neuroscience level, we are geared for living for today. Now that understanding, and then you start working on a financial services client's problem, it takes you onto a very different territory.
Yeah.
Let me give you another example. Now, insurance, term policies, we have been trying to say, you might die, when you die, after that your family, they should have a nice life.
Yeah.
Great, wonderful. It's a great, wonderful thing to have.
Yeah.
But again, the same question, is the human brain geared to think of death? Now, when you start asking that question, the next question is, have you ever experienced your death, even in your dreams? Even in the dream, as you're falling down and about to hit the floor, you woke up.
Yeah.
Which means you and I, even in our dreams, have not experienced our death. Now that ad that tells that you will die, take care of it, it's just not human nature. And then you go deeper and you realize that denying our death is a fundamental construct of our brain. So how can a term policy work? So I think in all these, the moment you start looking at any business problem the client gives you and says, is it from an evolutionary, from a neuroscience point of view, are the winds with me or is it against me?
Yeah.
And that one question itself can actually change the way you actually start designing the solutions for the problems the clients give you.
Absolutely. I think, I think most of us really don't really understand what it's like thinking for tomorrow just yet. Like, we know that what we want today and what we want to enjoy today and live today, but thinking about tomorrow, it still feels very exhausting. So I feel like you're right. Like, I think we've not sort of gotten over the fact that now we have to really think about our future until unless, I guess, some trigger happens or something happens where you maybe that point of time maybe you might think about it.
But it's the very fact that our brain is not geared to think of future.
Yeah.
Suddenly makes my job as a designer for financial services much, much more tougher.
Yeah.
Then I'm really fighting against a whole evolutionary force of 680 million years. So you know how tough our job is. So I think that is where understanding of neuroscience, the basics of neuroscience as far as your problem is concerned, now tells you what to do and what not to do. But there are a lot of cases like safety, for example. Okay, being hit by a train and you go, no one wants to die. So obviously then telling them, oh, be careful of the train should also become easier because evolutionarily none of us ever want to die. So some things become easier, some things become tough, but that looking at the problem at a neuroscience level, at a very basic brain function level, I think could be a good starting point whenever the client briefs come to you.
Absolutely. So we're going to get more into AI, as we all must. It's our future. This question is a question I've been dying to ask you because, ever since AI has come into our lives over the last 1.5 years, it's been there for a long amount of time, but in the limelight over 1.5 years, I think every designer has asked this question to someone at some point, that will AI replace my job? Now that we're getting more used to AI and actually utilizing it on a regular basis, I feel like the question needs to be different, which is why I wanted to ask you that what is one skill no AI model can replace in a designer even 10 years from now?
When you look close, and first of all, AI is an amazing technology. And I think that's going to change the way we have always and the way we've lived so far. It's going to dramatically change. The way we work so far is going to change, there's no doubt. Even as designers, AI is going to play a very significant role in our lives. There's no doubt about it. But the question that you asked, I think, is a very relevant one. In the world of AI, what will I do as a designer? And that's where we have to look closely at what AI is. AI is based on extremely brilliant, large understanding of the past. And based on that past, they will actually predict the past and they just put it onto the future. That's a replication of the past is what they bring in. But what does designers do? What is creativity is all about? Creativity is not about replicating the past and pasting it onto the future. That you will say, oh, I've seen it. That's not what it is. Creativity is all about, it could be two things in the past, but they never come together. And then you bring it into the future. So I often say, let's go back to what regarded as the first innovation, creative output of a human being. And there was a stone tool that was there. And stone tool, they just improved upon for 50,000 years. And you can see that from all the archaeological work that you can do. Then there was a huge shift. What happened? Someone put that stone tool between a split branch and tied it up, and suddenly that became an axe. Now, that is creativity. That is innovation. Now, what AI will do is they'll always perfect and improve upon the stone tool. But putting it onto a split branch and then making it to an act, that is innovation, is going to come only from a human being. And when I spoke about the non-conscious, even that innovation is the work of a non-conscious. AI doesn't have any non-conscious. AI is very conscious of everything they know. Innovation always comes from two things that never were combined earlier. And that is where the role of the human beings will be. And one other thing I can tell you is AI, yes, will take away a lot of the routine jobs. Now, what it does to you is you will have a lot of free time. Innovation always happens while people are relaxing. All the greatest innovation has happened when people are away from the labs, relaxing. Archimedes was relaxing in his bathtub, and that's when his revelation, the insight came in. Look at the person who identified the structure of an atom. He was watching a horse race. That's when he said, "Oh, okay, now I know what it is." So what we're going to see is a very different aspect of routine jobs, boring jobs, the machines will do for you.
Yeah.
Whereas creative jobs, innovation, interesting, the humans will do it. That's where the coexistence of AI and the humans will happen. And I look forward to that brilliant coexistence of AI and humans.
You make the future so exciting when you put it in this perspective, because I think if redundancy is out of the way, then you have all the space for creativity. So we're actually looking forward to an era of creativity instead of an era of AI. I mean, it's there, it exists, it will be there, but it's beautiful. It's a great ray of hope for designers to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. It was so inspiring. I have to move on to the next. I have to pull away from this one. But, I read in a recent article with Mint, you wrote about human-centered AI. What does that mean to you?
Incidentally, I am also heading the expert panel with Niti Aayog was created to make sure that India has a human-centered AI. One, because India, we are the most populous country in the world. So we cannot have an AI which actually replaces half of Indian population. So our whole approach to AI in India, and that policy paper would be out soon, Niti Aayog will release it. It is to make sure that 1.4 billion people in this country, each of them, even in the aspirational districts, which means the poorest of the poor, their lifestyles, their life will get lifted up because of AI in one way or the other. That's what human-centered AI is. We improve the whole welfare of our nation up by several points because we have the wonderful support of the technology. That's what human-centered AI is. This AI is not about an AI that replaces humans, being detrimental to human welfare. No, it is not. I think that's a sort of a scary world which you have created, which many times it happens. Many times, and even when the machines came in, industrialization came in, there were a set of people who were the Luddites who said, "Oh, this is taking away jobs, let's break all the machines." No. AI is going to change and make this world a much better place to live in. And India is definitely looking forward to that AI, which really where machines, AI will play a role in our education system, in our healthcare system, take every facet of life. It just makes our life better. That's a human-centered AI that I think this country is working towards. And I'm sure that's what all of us hope for. Let me at the same time tell you, can AI be used for some bad things? Of course it can be used, and it will be used for bad things. As I said earlier, everything in the world can and has been used for bad by the evil people. Yeah. We need to be cognizant of that. We need to find ways to make sure that, okay, who are those people? What are they using it for? And create preventive and systems to make sure that evil usage of AI is reduced, mitigated, whereas the human-centered AI, which actually benefits the larger welfare, actually gets a lift.
How long do you think this change would take, like for us in India, where we see the country becoming a lot more stronger in terms of being uplifted through AI? because that is something that I've always hoped that, India is more recognized for and seen for. And you've been quite involved in trying to see how this country can truly get the recognition that it deserves to get through different kind of innovations that we're doing, and how beautiful our culture also really is. So how long do you think, have you made an estimate, or have you had the discussion? Can you give us like a sneak peek in this?
It's already happening. It's already happening.
Right.
I was part of a Niti Aayog panel that was created to sort of evaluate some of the best projects our state governments are doing. And again, in the rural, what we call aspirational districts, they are the poorest districts of our country. Let me give you an example of a district in Jharkhand, Gultumga, and the district collector was making a presentation. What is the problem? The problem with 8th standard, the high school, 8th, 9th, and 10th, due to whatever reasons, there are no science teachers. Physics, chemistry, maths, no one is there. So what happens, a lot of those kids actually sort of drop out from the high school. Forget about ever they're making it to an engineering college, forget about an IIT completely. Now, what did this district collector do? He actually tied up with an AI company and has created now, laptops have been given by someone else. These students now have an AI-based science teachers who actually, so the lessons are all taken by them. Now, any of those kids have actually a doubt, actually they can ask a question within 60 seconds. Some teacher from anywhere in the country will actually answer that particular question to them. Now, the participation of the students that are finishing graduation as high school had tremendously gone up. The number of students into engineering college have gone up. Last year, 2 students from the district have made it to IIT.
Wow.
Now, that is one of the poorest districts of this country, far, far away. And you could have blamed, we don't have teachers, we can have... It's not about, again, as I said, it's all about solving that particular problem using AI. And I think, obviously, the context of it, the system around it, of course, these are all was designed. And if you ask me if a designer is coming in, but to make sure that the students adopt to AI and really use it and have the benefits. So it's happening. Yeah. I can go on about various examples that are happening in this country where AI is making a huge difference to some of the poorest districts of this country. So AI is not just about benefiting the rich and the powerful. It is about
empowering the poor.
Exactly. Empowering the poorest sections of our society.
That's amazing. I mean, mind blown. All right, so Biju, I have another question for you. Is there any case study where design, neuroscience, and AI all came together to drive a real behavior change?
Yeah, I think we have, possibly that's one of our most recent of our projects. And also, I might say it's actually one of the toughest human behavior problems that I had to handle so far in my career. It's one of the Middle East countries. The Department of Health said, hey, can you get our people to take more steps? The reason was because it is actually one of the most obese countries in the world. Almost 60 to 65% of the people are obese. Why? Because it's one of the richest countries in the world. Each of those people have 3-4 servants. Even if a spoon falls down, there's a servant who will come and lift it up and then give it, and take it away. That's one. Second is, of course, they have a valid reason for not exercising because outside the humid climate, and so obviously it's difficult. But then it's a country, as I said, they're very, very, very rich. Eating food is very, very common. I mean, it's there, let's call it the national fun activity they indulge in. And the biggest issue is if you and I were slightly extra weight, the dress that we wear tends to show up that, your weight. But this is, obviously, they have both the men and women hide themselves from neck down.
Yeah.
So actually, there's no reason for them to actually, to really take more steps and reduce their obesity. But from a health point of view, we need. And that's when we said, what can we do? But one insight we found was that it's one of the countries with the highest penetration of smartwatches. Almost 85% of the people have smartwatches, which means there's data. And then my engineering team worked and said, let's develop an app that captures that particular data. And once you capture the data, my AI team is able to look at it and then segment the people at an individual level. So I know you are a person who takes 600 steps. Most of the 600 steps happen in the early part of the day, whereas someone else might take 800 steps. Most of the 800 steps are taken towards the evening of the day. So we know from a messaging point of view, we have now special messaging that is clearly meant for you to actually take more steps. Now, what we did was we looked at all the behavior change models and also all the other competitors that are actually trying to use technology to get them to change. Fitbit, Apple, a lot of them are trying to change their behaviors. And all of them try to sort of give a feeling as if, 7,000 or 10,000 steps is the ideal thing to do. Now, we knew from a human behavior point of view that you give such high goals and you're not going to achieve those goals. And very, very difficult. You might do 2,000 or 3,000 steps, people are taking it. But suddenly, when you put something like 7,000 steps or 8,000 steps, you think you're a failure. Or people have, what they call leadership boards. Again, you're saying, look at, he's achieved it, you're a failure. So we knew obviously also the long-term benefits. You will be healthy when you're 70. Again, as we said, the brain doesn't want to talk about long-term.
Yeah.
We changed all the existing rules of the existing traditional paradigm. And we said, we're not going to give huge long-term goals. You've taken 600 steps. Can you take 1% more steps than that tomorrow? Can you take 606 steps tomorrow? Now, that's a goal which I'm sure you would say, I agree. And we said, but more important, we knew the importance of emotions, importance of giving a stimuli that makes them at an emotional level, get them to take steps. So what did we do? We said, there was a rose flower. And that rose flower, again, we made it a photograph and not a graphic one. It begins at a silhouette which is empty. But as you take more steps, it just starts filling up. And then as you reach 606 steps, there you have a rose flower which is blooming. Now that's what everyone, obviously that's a reward that we are providing. But we also knew any behavior change that you talk about, there will be people who will drop out.
Yeah.
So we have to give them an emotional cost of not following. So what did we do? This rose flower starts withering and it almost becomes dead. Now, after 1 month, we looked at the number of steps that people were taking. And we had a control group which had the traditional, rational communication going to them. And compared to that, I think people were in that 600, 700 steps, and that's what most of the people were. They had moved up to 4,000 steps in a day. And that is the difference. And when we asked them, why did you take these steps? They said, we didn't want our flower to die. Now, that is the power of bringing in AI engineering and this neuroscience understanding of creating an emotional stimuli.
Yeah.
It's hidden somewhere. You had messages coming in, obviously reminding you in your case in the morning that you need to take steps and your rose flower is waiting or whatever. Someone else, it could be in the evening. That's what the AI was. There was a whole transference of data from smart watches, keeping your track of you every day and increasing that by 1% every day. That's all the engineering AI backend of this. But finally, people were walking, and taking more steps just to make sure their flower doesn't die. That's the power of AI engineering and design coming together. We can use this for any other behavior change projects that we want to do.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Biju, for that example. I think that says so much about not just solving the problem at par, but something much more deeper that you need to look at. And that's exactly...
Using technology, using the latest AI technology. That's where AI and design fraternity can come together and develop solutions that actually solves the significant problems of the world.
Amazing. All right, guys. So while we've had this amazing session with you, Biju, I wish it never ends. But this leads us to the last round of our podcast. And that round's called the Chop Chop round. It's like a fire, like a fire question round, but we like to call it Chop Chop because of our name, pineapple and slicing. So we have to go really quick in this round. and you only get about a word or a maximum a sentence to answer this. So, a book you think every designer should read?
Influenced by Robert Cialdini.
Is design more like science or art?
It's a combination of both.
What's one human behavior we keep designing around instead of addressing?
One I really want for us to address would be violence against women.
If you weren't in design, what would you be doing today?
I'll still be in some other facet of human behavior for sure.
What's one of the biggest myths you heard about neuroscience?
And that one that 90% of our brain is not used is one of the biggest myths. Whereas 100% of our brain always is functioning, even when it's idle, when it's sleeping.
Interesting. A non-obvious cultural insight you think designers overlook in India?
I think one of our deeper non-conscious that affects our society is that we're scared of scarcity. And we are scared that if I don't do enough, I'll lose an opportunity. That is why we stand up as soon as a flight lands in an airport.
Oh, that's very good. That's amazing. All right, so that's all the questions. And chop, I think you will win the hamper. But thank you so much for coming in, Biju. It's been a pleasure, and I've had an amazing time. It's been an honor to host you, honestly. And I just hope that everyone loved this episode, and I'm sure it's going to be really amazing. And I hope the one that scores the highest.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, guys.